All right. Well, welcome to the Truth and Leadership Academy, everybody. Today we're talking about anxiety. Anybody struggle with that in the recent past? I think everybody has, right? In fact, how do you know, how do you not struggle with anxiety unless you go through it to learn how to not struggle with it, right? You have to struggle with it. You have to go through it. It's kind of like running. You can't really run until you learn to crawl first and then walk, and then you run. There's no shortcuts. It's the same thing. We have to experience anxiety and learn how to cope with it and learn how to deal with it before we can actually move forward and not be a slave of it, and so to speak. So that's what we're talking about today. There's a quote by Henry Miller that says, "The world is not to be put in order. The world is order. It is for us to put ourselves in unison with this order." Doesn't that sound interesting? It's for us to put ourselves in unison with this order. That's not necessarily a popular way for people to think. Some people don't necessarily agree with this statement, but it is true no matter how we look at it. So I do want to define a few words so that we can kind of set this up. And by the way, this presentation will have plenty of time for interaction, so we can have some discussion and talk, and really like to use some real life examples and hear what you guys have to say about that. But before we really get into that, I do want to define a few terms so that we can kind of be organized in what we're discussing. So the first word is order. When we move in tandem with the universal truths of the world. So when we're working in tandem, or we're working at the same in the same direction, when we're spitting away from the wind instead of into the wind, right? When we're trying to swim downstream instead of upstream, when we're using gravity to our advantage instead of to our disadvantage. You know what I mean by that? You're using gravity and advantage as opposed to like free falling. Free falling is not to your advantage when you don't have something under you holding you stable, right? You jump off a cliff, gravity's not going to be your favor, or it's not going to be your partner. It's not going to help you at all. So chaos is when we move independently or contrary to the universal truths of the world. So when we work independently or contrary. And I'm sure you guys can think of lots of examples of that, right? When we work contrary to the principles that we're supposed to be agreeing with, you know. And then the third word is peace. So when the fear of the unknown is subsided, that's when we get peace. So think about it with peace. Think about a time when you're in your home and it feels like peace. Usually it comes a lot of times. It comes on the heels of getting something under control. Like for me, when I get my house all cleaned up and I put things in order, and then I get to relax, and then it's like, wow, this is good. I feel peace. I feel like I don't have this overwhelming sense of having to clean up a mess because I got it done, and I'm good. I'm kind of at peace. The fear of the unknown isn't there. I can relax for the rest of the day. You guys ever felt that way? You know what I'm saying? And then on the other side of it though too, you know, like for me, I might have a day off and I got some things I got to do, maybe doing some things around the house, and I procrastinate on it, and I feel the stress of that procrastination. Then halfway in the afternoon, I still feel that stress, but it's because I haven't taken care of stuff. I haven't put things in the order that they needed to. I've been procrastinating, not dealing with it. So you can't enjoy your day off because you're not ahead of things. Things aren't in order. Things are in chaos, right? It's crazy how that works, but even the little things, that's how our brain works. That's what procrastination does for us. It creates chaos, and putting things in order and getting things done helps to give us peace. And then, of course, the lack of that, you know, anxiety would be when the fear of the unknown is elevated. Okay, so peace is when the fear of the unknown is subsided. So you kind of know what's going on. You know where to get things. You know what's going to happen over the course of the next week, or your money is budgeted, so you know where it's going to go. Chaos is the other side. Anxiety is when the fear of the unknown is elevated. You don't know you don't know where your money's going to go because you don't even know where your money is. You don't know where your wallet is, and you haven't planned anything out. You got bills coming in, and you don't even know how you're going to pay it. That's chaos because it's the fear of the unknown. A budget is the other way around. Or, you can apply it to all the different areas of your life. And so these are 4 different words that we're going to show you how they all fit together here in just a minute. So any question on all those things? Does that make sense? Are those fair definitions? These aren't Webster definitions. These are definitions to fit these into the presentation. You can figure that out, right? So, okay. So let's move on. Here we go. First of all, we got order. We got chaos. And there's a contrast between these two. These are on a spectrum. They're opposites, okay? So you got order over here and you got chaos over here. Order is, again, what's the definition of order?
When we move into tandem with the universal truths of the world.
Yep. So we're agreeing and we're cooperating with the way things should be, and then chaos is when we're going against the way things should be, right? That's kind of, so you got this spectrum, and most of the time we're not. You don't really find people that just like do everything opposite of the way it should be done. Nobody's really like that. Hopefully not. And then nobody's like perfectly structured where they're just doing everything. We're all somewhere in the middle, right? We're all on that spectrum someplace. And so it's important to understand that spectrum because we all fall somewhere in there. And the idea is that we're going to want to go more towards order. Now, there is a place over here that's beyond order. This is the healthiest order. There is this, and this would be like OCD. Over controlling, over micromanaging. That's not what we're talking about. That's not on the spectrum. That's beyond this, because that turns into chaos also. We're talking about order where things are the way they're supposed to be, not further than what they're supposed to be. Make sense? OCD is not based on truth. It's based on a very exaggerated perspective of truth. Micromanaging isn't based on the natural order of the world. It's based on trying to control those things from a personal perspective. So that's the difference, just so you know. All right, so then you got on another spectrum, you've got peace and anxiety. And those are opposites as well, right? You can see peace is where, relaxation, things are the way they're supposed to be. Things are in order. All the toys are put away on the right shelves in the place that they're supposed to go, right? Your time is scheduled in and budgeted into your calendar the way they're supposed to be. Your money is budgeted. You can apply it to everything. Your schedule, your work schedule, your red book, as an example of that. It's when things are moving in the right order that lines up with maximum production, maximum efficiency, and the less wasted time, wasted energy, that type of thing. Anxiety is the opposite side of that. That's when the fear takes over. You don't know what's going to happen because order seems to have disappeared, right? Think about this. Think about New York City. You could kind of rise above New York City in a helicopter, and you could look around and you could say, "Wow, this is a whole city of order. They've got 50,000 stoplights." And the cars are stopping, they're waiting their turn, they're going. There's stop signs, there's traffic laws everywhere. There's businesses where people come and go, and there's all kinds of order going on. There's trains that stop at certain times because that's the schedule. They pick up a certain amount of people, they move on. Everything is in order. Now, throw in a 9/11 scenario. Chaos, right? We've all seen the pictures or watched it live of what took place on 9/11. And that created all kinds of anxiety the whole country, the whole world became anxious because of that, because order was disrupted. Now nobody knew what was going to happen in the city. Nobody knew how it was going to affect the economy. Nobody knew how it was going to affect travel. Everything changed. Anybody fly before 9/11? Like jumped on a plane? And then it's different now, though, isn't it? Now they got to frisk you and send you through x-rays. And
people can't go to the gate anymore.
Yeah.
Go to the gate and say goodbye.
It's crazy. The time to get through that line is like 3 times what it used to be. It used to be you flash something, you flash your IDs, whatever, and you just move right through. Well, that's what uncertainty brings. It brings fear and anxiety, and it makes it difficult to move. It makes people anxious. Anxiety makes us unhappy. It makes us much less effective. We can't think when we're anxious, right? And so, like the 9/11 scenario is one that it's just a good example of what happens. Other times when there's maybe the difference between order, where everybody's working in cooperation and it works, versus maybe there's a problem, a cog in the wheel that leads to riots. You know, see, right now in China, there's all kinds of riots because there's unrest. People don't know what to expect out of the government going forward, and so they're rebelling. They're leaving order because they don't know, and it causes anxiety, and people react in a very negative way. It's like the full moon turn into werewolves when there's uncertainty, when we don't know what to expect. So the element of fear and anxiety, or chaos and anxiety, is real, and there's things that trigger that and move us that direction for sure. And it affects our jobs, it affects our work, it affects everything. So here's where the relationship comes in here. So when there is order, there is peace, right? When there is chaos, chaos leads to anxiety. Okay, that's the correlation. It's always this way, to some degree. It's always this way. Not that there aren't other factors, but where there's chaos, there's always anxiety, right? Imagine you start a job and you go to that job, and the first day everything's a mess. You got everybody's angry, everybody's all over the place, no one knows what to do. Most people are going to just turn around and walk away and go, I'm not dealing with this chaos. This is not for me. Or maybe a different, you join a company, you start your first day, and you get your orientation, and everything's explained up front, and everything seems to be in order and organized, and everybody seems to be on the same page. That's order, and that gives you a sense of peace, right? You're like, I think I'm going to like it here. My wife just went through that. She just switched schools to a different school. She sent me a text a little while ago. This is her first day in a new school. She's like, I think I'm really going to like this. She walked in, and there was more order than what she just came from. She had a problem in her last school, just really struggled in an area. And she had a class that there were 13 languages being spoken in this language. 13 out of her 23 kids didn't speak English. And she wasn't prepared for this, and she didn't do very well. And she needed to move out of that situation, a chaotic situation, move into one that's not. And they need to deal with the chaos of that school and that classroom in order. They need to get order back, right, to remove all that. And that's what they're struggling with. So anyway, so understand the relationship here. So order leads to peace, chaos leads to anxiety, and there's a spectrum that we're all on going this way. Okay. Now, if we have a great amount of anxiety in our workplace, so maybe there's a lot of chaos, there's not a lot of rule following going on, and there's a lot of anxiousness, people aren't getting along, they're afraid of what's going to happen, maybe people shorthanded, that's all messy and ugly, and it comes from chaos, anxiety. If that's the case, then that's our culture then. Our culture is a culture of anxiety if we do that. And that's really hard to turn around when you have a culture of anxiety. And the only way you can turn that around is not with more anxiety, not with more chaos, but the only way to turn that around is with order. Is you have to move towards order. You have to regain order. Imagine, it's the same thing that, like with the 9/11 examples, Rudy Giuliani did a fantastic job of regaining order in New York City after that happened. He spoke well. I'm not a big Rudy fan, but in this scenario, he did a really good job. He spoke. He brought calmness and collectiveness and so did President Bush at the time. They brought calmness and brought order to a chaotic situation, and people calmed down, and they started to rally behind America. The very next week they had one of the best football games ever, in New York City, and it was incredible. They just had soldiers there, and it was really cool because there was a sense of order, like, okay, this happened, but this is not going to keep us down. We're going to get back up. We're going to find these people. We're going to rebuild. We're going to be okay. And that's where the order comes back. It's recovery, right? But for a time, there was a lot of chaos. But that's what we have to do. When we're in a chaotic situation, we have to quickly move towards order. Maybe you've seen a situation when there's a mess in the store, and then, or maybe you guys get called to the store. You get there and it's chaotic, and then you get there, and maybe you have the chance to just take control and put things back in order. Like, okay, guys, I got this. You do this, you do this. And everybody's like going their own way, but somebody takes control of the situation, brings order to it, calmness, collectiveness, and the anxiety and the chaos goes away. The anxiety is subsided, as that's what a leader does. That's what a great leadership does. And so, but this is a cultural thing with our stores. So I want to talk through that. I want to ask you guys, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that lead to chaos in our stores? What's the biggest? What's the thing that slides us this way? The obstacles that are in the way more so than others. What can you guys see?
I'd say, first of all, when you're not organized and you don't properly prepare yourself or even get to the steps to get there, then your whole day.
How do you get unorganized?
Maybe just wait it out, see how the day goes.
Now, how do you get unorganized?
Unorganized?
Not planning.
You don't have to get unorganized. That's where we start. Right? That's not hard to,
I was like, how do you get unorganized? I mean,
Not
So I guess
planning,
like if you're just
you already
classes
started that
up
way,
in
so
the
you're
morning.
not
Right.
changing anything. You're just
right.
gonna sit still and not move forward.
if you don't always stay on top of planning
Yeah.
and staying ahead of the game.
So the next question, how do you stay unorganized? How do you stay in chaos?
Stressing.
What's that?
Stressing.
Yeah, you let it keep piling on, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. Yep. You know the best way to get yourself out of a hole? First of all, the first step: stop digging.
I mean, yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can you see how we dig ourselves holes with anxiety? Because here's what we do: things start to get a little bit rough, and so instead of being solution minded and focusing on the solution, we start focusing on the problem. Focus on the problem, boom, you go to chaos. Focus on the solution, you move towards order. It's always like that. And here's the thing, whether we start focusing on the solution or focus on the problem, that's always our choice. Y'all know that. We talk about this all the time in this, right? It's always our choice. And so chaos comes and we all go, oh God, this is gonna suck. And then the next person says, well, I guess if they think it's gonna, I guess it is gonna suck because that's the boss. If the boss thinks it's gonna suck, it's not gonna not suck, right? How can it not, right? So this spectrum is kind of interesting to think of it like that. So we all have a choice to move towards that. Now we have natural tendencies, and some of us have bigger barriers to get over for this. Some of us really have to work hard to get over a chaos mentality or anxiety, and other people don't struggle as much. But the thing is every one of us can get better at it. Every one of us can improve. And I would say most people, not everyone, some people, the older they get, the worse they get. My mom's one of those people. She struggles. She's in her 70s now, and she struggles with anxiety more so than she did when she was younger because that's what she wants, And other people will just get better at it. I know I used to stress out a lot more in my 20s than I did in my 30s. And I stressed out more in my 30s than I did in my 40s and 50s and so on. And you do it, and you learn how to change your mindset, and all of a sudden order starts to come. And people notice that. People can notice that you have order when you're thinking that way. People also notice when you fall apart. They're like, and then you lose credibility, and people don't want to follow you, and they leave and they go somewhere else because they don't think that you're the magnet that they want to work for. But this is interesting. So the first thing we need to do is we need to work on our culture. So we need to bring a culture of order. So let's just say you guys move. I'll just say you move to a store. You move to a store that has some anxiety and chaos, and you didn't bring that anxiety and chaos, but it's your responsibility as the manager to help fix that problem. How would you go about helping that culture to align itself with order? What would be some of the first things that you would do maybe in the first month? What could you think of?
Well, I'd say that's what I did do. And I think the first thing I did was organize the store and get everybody back on track with utilizing the books, and then hiring people and building morale and showing. I think for me, the biggest part was I had to show the crew that I was there and I was going to 100%, do what I needed to do to, get us back in line.
Yep.
And therefore, the 2 employees that were there, wanted to stay with me.
Yep. And develop trust.
That's a good job. I mean, that's 2 more than you would have had. If you would.
And some of the values that we all have in our work is, don't we all want to work for somebody that's stable, that brings order, and that you can trust, and that's going to be consistent? Don't we all want to work for people like that? People that you can count on, that aren't going to flake out or throw you in the doghouse. We call that doghouse management, but that's going to work with you and help you work through something, and that's going to tell the truth. Isn't that what we all want? And isn't that all order? That's all order. Disorder is when you don't know what that person's going to say, if they're going to lie to you for their own best interest, or if they're going to try to manipulate you by trying to tell you what you want to hear, or if they're going to try to fool you, or if they're going to get mad at you, and they're going to throw you under the bus. That's chaos. That's crap. That doesn't work. That creates a bad culture. And so I think the thing here is you start with people first. I mean, you could say, well, we start with the system. Let's get the Red Book working. Well, I would say, no, let's not start with the Red. It doesn't mean we don't start using it. Well, we start with people. We build that trust. Hey, you know what? I'm going to need you. I'm going to need you. Let's come by my side. Let's get this done. Can I count on you? You can count on me. I promise. Here's what I'm going to do for you. Here's the promises I'm going to make to you. So you're building trust, and you get people you get that alliance, and now you get 2 people working in the same direction. Now you're more than twice as strong as you were just one. And then you get another person involved, you get the whole management team involved, working in the same direction, and there's trust. It's like, hey, I got your back. I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to be here for you. And then you get everybody working alignments. Now you got order, and your culture can start to run itself. And you get that all the way down to the crew level, and the crew's working with each other. That's just a magical thing. That's one of the things I love about this industry. We get a bad rap, and there's a lot of problems, but man, it doesn't have to be like that. We can get to the point where things are rolling and great, and you surround yourself with great people that you love to spend time with, all of that. And that's order, and that's where the magic comes. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of unawareness about this stuff, and so you just have a lot of cultures of anxiety in the restaurant industry. We've all been there, right? But just remember, there's a choice. We don't have to be that way. So we want to seek peace that comes from order. So that's where we always start. We either work to continue that if it's going well and everything is the way we want it to be. We just work really hard to protect those values and keep those going. Or we got to get after it and get it going in that direction. So you guys have any thoughts about this model? Does that all make sense? I think all of us could probably think of times in your career where you're at different places on the spectrum, right? Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard, but it's a lot harder when you're not thinking yourself through it. When you're just reacting emotionally, that's really hard because it's impossible. When you let your emotions just have its way with you, then we're always going to just go fly there, and then everything falls apart. But when we think our way through it, and we decide ahead of time how we're going to react in a situation, which ironic, we're going to talk about that in the next one, but then things start to go well, just from the foundational principles of order, of lining your values up and lining the way that you work up with the natural laws of nature that really work. There are just certain laws of nature that you just can't really get away from. It's like the law of niceness. When you're nice to people, people tend to be nice to you. When you're not nice to people, they don't tend to be nice to you. That's a law. That's the way it really is. When you yell and scream at other people, you don't gain credibility in their eyes. You lose credibility in their eyes. When you compliment them and you're their cheerleader and you help them and you help reinforce their value, they are going to love working for you. Those are just laws, but how many times do you see people violate those laws? We want some kind of alignment, so we use force or authority to try to get it, but it doesn't work because it goes against the laws of nature. Right? It might work temporarily. You put a gun to someone's head and do this, and they'll do it, and you get your order. but it won't be long. You take the gun away, they're gone, right? And you might be in jail.
You're gone too.
Yeah, then you're gone. That's it, right? That's true. That's what I mean.
Was
So,
it worth it?
so at best, those things are short term, and they're just not lasting. And of course, building a company, or building a business, or building a store, a culture, we want longer term success. We don't want to just think about this shift and making sure everybody does exactly the way I want it. We want to build continuity and things working together that's going to last the next shift and the next week and the next month, that kind of thing. All right, so the principle here that we're looking at is when order goes up, anxiety goes down, right? It's just the way it is. When order goes up, anxiety goes down. And sometimes it takes faith for that to happen. Like you'll see a system in place. Maybe it's a system like handcuffing or single tasking instead of multitasking. And some people might look at that and think, that's just an option. It's just another way to do it. It's not any better. It's just Joel's way. My way can be just, well, no, it's on a spectrum. It really is on a spectrum. And it really does. These things will work better. There are ways that work better and other ways that don't work better. And the idea is to learn how things really work. And so if you haven't learned that and you don't know that getting a bunch of things out and starting 10 different tasks at once, if you don't know that that's a bad thing, then you have no reason to not do it. But if you realize it's a bad thing and that it's going to just get you out of control and you're not going to, then you can stop doing it. And so part of it, there's a trust element. Sometimes you just have to trust that the system put in place is a better system. Now, sometimes it's not, but the unity that you get from everybody doing the same thing makes up for it. Make sense? So even if whatever it is, that one system that's in place, even if it's not the best system, even if it's one that there's a half a dozen ways you could do it, and this just happens to be one of them, the other ones work just as well, it's still better when everybody works the same system, because now you have unity. And so now you have harmony and unity. Whereas if you get 6 different ways of doing things, you got 6 people doing it all different ways, that's chaos. Order comes when everybody's doing it the same way, regardless whether it's the best way, right? Remember my example that I talk about when I go to McDonald's and I'm the fry guy, right? It doesn't matter if I've done fries at a different restaurant or sandwiches at a different, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do it the way that they want me to do it because I want to make their job easier and I want to align with the right way that they do it. Doesn't matter if I have a better way of doing it, right? So that's where that comes from. So as order goes up, anxiety goes down. When order goes down, anxiety goes up, right? Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. That's where anxiety comes from. There is a system. There's a couple of things. Either there's no system and a problem arises and there's no way to solve it. Like imagine if you had a school and they never did fire drills. They never did tornado drills. They didn't know how to deal with those. No one ever knew. And then a fire took place. And over the intercom they said, "Fire, get out!" That would be chaos, wouldn't it? That would be chaos. Everybody would be running to the door. It would be a mad dash. It'd be like that. Like back in the 80s, there was a concert in Florida by the Who, where they opened up the gates all at once, and 7 people got trampled to death because it was just mass chaos.
This happens on Black Friday too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the same thing because there's no order. It's
like they just push
my
open.
husband on Black Friday once.
Yep.
So.
And so when there's no order, anxiety goes up. And I'm sure in the middle of those crowds, there's a lot of anxiety going on because it's chaos. You don't know. You don't know if you're going to get trampled. You're like, you're freaking out in the middle of a crowd because you want to go get your daughter this certain doll, and there's only 50 of them, and you want to get, it's chaos. I don't know how the Black Friday thing works. It's like they play off chaos.
I have done that, and I have broke out in tears when I couldn't get what I wanted.
I usually have a table for
You are a Black Friday girl though. So.
Yes, and then I made Chris.
It's my birthday this
And
year.
then I made Chris
Kinda crazy.
get in there and find it for me.
Can you guys think of an example of each one of these where order in our business where what might be an example of order that reduces anxiety, and then maybe another example of the lack of order that increases anxiety?
Time goals.
What's that?
Time goals.
Okay, how's that?
Because you keep yourself on track. with time goals.
And then you feel less anxious. Yeah. Because you're not, when you know you're on a budget, you're not afraid of when you're going to get done. But if you don't have that time goals, you really don't have any idea when you're going to get done. Then you're anxious, right?
Yeah, and then if it starts going into dinner rush, then you're just a whole bunch of mess.
Right. So now, I mean, so you can understand why in our business we talk about finish lines, right? And we talk about what's the word I'm looking for? The benchmarks. We talk about finish lines and benchmarks all the time, just exactly for that reason. Because benchmarks and staying on a budget, so you know where you're at and where you're going, it just reduces anxiety. You know where you're at. You know you're going to get done on time because you follow the same thing every day, and you know what to expect. But you don't have any of that stuff. What if you were to get trained as a manager in Papa Murphy's? No red book, no prep chart, no dough tracker. It's like, okay, you guys, I want you guys to go run the store.
There are good tools.
They're very good tools.
And
Right?
and stuff.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be hard
Rachel
though?
could probably do it, but not, not me.
I mean,
I
you could do it,
couldn't.
but you're not gonna do it very well.
No.
Because you're not gonna know what you're
And
doing.
you're going to be really stressed out.
You're just gonna be like, I quit.
Right.
Like-
Or what if we didn't talk about Halloween ahead of time to really discuss a plan around it? And, you know, there's the anxiety, the fear of the unknown. Yeah, I've never done this before. And of course, if you've done it once, your anxiety goes down because now you have a sense of order because you did it last year. And now you have a form of reference that you can work from. But when you don't know what to expect because you've never done it, anxiety is high. It just really is. It's amazing when you have order how much you can handle. And it's amazing when you don't have order how little you can handle. It's just it is that much of a contrast.
And I truly do think of my first year with all the holidays, and then even my second year was a little rough because it was from one store to another.
Right.
So, you know, a different kind of volume. And then this year, everything has just
Yep.
came into place.
You took another level,
It's
another
been-
step forward.
Because of what Rachel has taught me, my first baker's night wasn't bad. I wasn't stressed out, hardly.
Hmm.
I did
Yep.
good.
Yeah, because you were in a system that had a lot of order to it. Yep.
I
And so,
even dressed up as Sully.
but you can see how trust plays into that too,
Yeah.
because you know you had some experience, but you also had other people that had more experience that you could talk to about it, that could help you see something maybe that you haven't seen. Somebody that's done it 15 times is going to have a little better perspective on someone that's done it twice or none or once, right? So there's always a better, and that brings order to it, and it relieves chaos. What if you had nobody in the company, including me? No one's ever gone through this before.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, so well,
That scared me.
that's the way it was year one for us. I'll tell you what happened.
Oh, I bet. Oh
We
my
opened
gosh.
up at the beginning of November, or actually it was the end of October, right before Halloween, I guess, in 2004, opened in Muscatine. We didn't know what to expect, so we didn't have a dough tracker that had a history in it. We didn't have a POS system that said anything. We're guessing, and so we had a pretty soft open. Nothing was really that big, and we were doing 250 to 275 pizzas on a Friday night through November and through Christmas, but we didn't know what was going to happen. Well, New Year's Eve came along, and so I remember projecting like 310 pizzas or whatever. Well, we did 551, but that's not expecting it, not knowing what's going to happen, and that's with the whole crew that's less than 2 months old, including me. I was the fastest person, the best person. I only worked there for a matter of 10 weeks, right? And that was chaos. Now, we did bring a certain amount of order to it, not based on knowledge, but based on leadership. I was able to keep people calm, and we got through it the best we can. And it was, no one was really freaking out. We were working, but it was chaos in the sense that we didn't know what to expect. And so, of course, the next year came around while we were ready for New Year's Eve then, because now we had a sense of order because we knew what to expect. We knew what to expect, and we prepared ahead of time. And we did like 485 pizzas that next year, and it was just like clockwork. The first year it was because we were just open, and there's that mad rush, So, anybody think of any other examples of order and anxiety being indirectly proportional?
Rachel told us because we followed it. Ashley, I, and everybody got those pizzas pre-made. By the time we closed and we thought we were going to be waiting until after, Rachel said there was a possibility that we would be making those pizzas after we get off. No, we had those done.
Get 'em
before
done.
Dinner rush started.
Yeah. Well, and that happens because of good communication, and when you get to see the big picture, when somebody communicates the big picture to you and gives you the steps and shows you how it will all fit together, well, that's not hard. It's like seeing a puzzle. The difference between putting a puzzle together, maybe you got a 500-piece puzzle, the difference between putting the puzzle together when you have the box to look at, what if you didn't have the box to look at? You don't even know what you're building. How do you put a...
Picture's supposed to look like.
Yeah, what's it supposed to look like? But a good leader can paint that picture for their crew. Hey, this is what it's going to look like, guys. I'm going to tell you what our Halloween is going to be like. I've already determined what it is. Now all we have to do is each one of us has to put our piece of the puzzle in the right place, and that's all it is. And a good leader will tell you where to put your piece of the puzzle. This is what you do. This is what you need to do. You don't need to solve the whole problem. You just need to do your part. I'm not asking you to make 700 pizzas. I'm asking you to make 35 pre-makes the night before. 55 pre-makes the night before, whatever it is.
What, 130? Rachel?
Yep.
No.
But not one person made all of them. You did it as a
No,
team.
we
So
did it as a
one
team.
person might have done 35, another person
We
might have
had
done 50.
2 on the back line and 3 of us up front all doing it.
Yep. So, but everybody was a different piece of the puzzle. And there was order to it because Rachel was already able to see what the box looks like, right? And she got to see the box because I showed her the box. And I learned the box from doing it and watching other people put their pieces together, right? So that's order, and that's the way it works. So let's move on. I want to get to, okay. So a leader of order, a leader that's thinking in terms of order, will have a culture of order. It's a natural. Your crew and your culture will always follow the leader's mentality. So if you have a leadership mindset, that will turn into a culture of leadership. Now, maybe not right away if you're taking over a store, if you're a brand new leader just learning the ropes. But once you get your leadership in order, then the culture will always follow. That is another natural law. See, sometimes this law is something that people don't believe because they don't ever think they'll ever be able to get there. But you can if you just get your mindset in order. It's inevitable. Some people think, yeah, I can get my own mindset in order, but I know it's still not going to make a difference. No, it always does. It always follows in a positive way when you do it. See what I mean? It's a law. It's kind of like you can drop a baseball off here. It's always going to fall. It's not like it falls most of the time, but sometimes you let go of it and it just kind of floats there. It doesn't. Or it's like we talked about sowing and reaping, right? You plant. It's not like 1 year you're going to plant all this corn and like nothing grows. It doesn't happen. It always grows. You know, every cornfield is going to grow, you know, apart from floods or whatever that are external circumstances. And then, of course, leaders of chaos are always going to have a culture of chaos. So the solution is that we need to move our thinking from chaotic thinking and embrace the order. And then in order to embrace the order, we got to figure out what order is, what that means, and then we have to commit to it, even though it doesn't feel natural. See, sometimes for most of us, for all of us actually, to some degree, chaos sometimes feels natural until you program yourself differently. Chaos feels natural, right? And once we program ourselves differently to think differently, then we think in terms of order. But that takes a reprogramming of the mind. It's not. Some people just believe that I just need to live the way it feels natural, and chaos is part of that. It's like I'm just going to make the best of it. But that doesn't get us anywhere. It's like a thief. If you want your life to go well, you got to change the way you think so that you don't steal, so that you don't go to prison, so you don't, you know, have all those negative things that happen to you when you go to prison. You know, but it's never going to do it if you just think, if I just try harder at the way that feels natural, then I'll change my course. No, if you're heading down one way and you just speed up, you're just going to get there faster, right? So that leader of chaos always leads to a culture of chaos. So as long as you can understand that and know where you're at on that spectrum, you can do something about it. So, and again, like I said, nobody starts over on the left unless you, I don't know, unless you have some kind of a real issue and you keep going, it'll turn into a OCD issue. But apart from that, okay, what a culture of order looks like. Let's look at this. Having a plan of action. We talked about that, right? If you want to have order, you got to have a plan. Knowing what's going to happen before it does, because anxiety and chaos is the fear of not knowing what's going to happen, right? So you plan, then you know what's going to happen, and your fear subsides, your anxiety goes down. Communication, bring understanding to the team, speak their language, eliminate ignorance and misunderstandings. That is one of the most important things we can do. Talking people into position, out of position, letting people know what the plan of action is when they come on. Maybe they come on at 11 o'clock on a Friday. It's like, okay, here's what's going on. This is what today is going to look like. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. You got my back? I got your back. You understand what we're doing? Okay, let's do this. Let's have fun. By the way, how are the kids, right? That's all part of order. So you have fun. You have fun. You enjoy yourself while you're in order, right? If you don't have that, it just spins down to chaos, and then no one has fun. No one cares about whether the other person's kids are doing all right or not, right? That's a horrible place to be when you're in a place you don't want to be around somebody because it's all chaotic and you have no concern for them, whatever. All right. Set clear expectations for the team, gracefully and respectfully. That means don't use authority. It just never works. Commit to and follow and teach the systems in place. We all know about the systems that we have in our place. Teach them and expect people to follow them. And also, but here's the thing too, don't use authority and say, this is the way we do it, now you have to do it that way. Say, hey, here's the way we do it, and we found that this really works, and here's why. And then you get the buy-in. And when they buy into it, they'll follow it automatically. When they don't get the buy-in, they'll only follow it if you hold them accountable. Man, that sucks though when you have to be a leader and all you do is hold everyone accountable. You teach them and you lead them, you help people see the benefits of doing things right, see the benefits of the system, and then they'll just naturally do it and you don't have to babysit. Once they see it works, they see, and they also have to see that you buy into it also. Again, you guys know how much I hate when my managers will say, this is a rule that Joel put in place, we got to follow it. No, claim it for your own. It's your rule. Buy into it. That same idea goes all the way down. If your closers don't buy into the idea of having a clean store ready to go for the morning, if they don't buy into that, then they're not going to do it because you're not there to supervise them. They need to buy into it. So you get them to buy into it and then they'll do it. And then you walk in the next morning, it's like, man, this is awesome. This is great. They buy into it. And then you reinforce that with positive reinforcement. Tell them how awesome they are and how great it is. And then that fuels it even more. It's like, wow, we had a lot of order going on. Chaos is just like left the building and we're on track. And then you got a lot of positive momentum going in that way. So don't let the need for authority render you powerless. And that's exactly what it is. Every time that you raise your voice, every time that you use your authority, you go all Barney Fife on somebody, you lose credibility in their eyes. That's just the way it is. You get angry at somebody and you tell somebody, you pull rank somehow. Look, you just do it. I'm your boss. You need to do it. You may think you won the battle, but you lost the war, right? So don't render yourself powerless, because here's what happens. There's a trigger that we all have, and some of us have it closer to the top of our consciousness than others. But when somebody abuses them some way, some people can be very. I'm a person that if somebody comes at me, I can be pretty patient with them, and it takes quite a bit. Like I don't get angry very easy. It takes a lot to get me angry, and so I can usually reason. Some people, that trigger gets tripped more easily. A manager, their leader, is critical of them. Boom, they'll flip the trigger and they'll just tune them out. Right? That happens. You've had employees like that. We've all probably been there too, right? They get demanding. They show you disrespect, and boom, you tune them out. Well, what do leaders do when they do that? We call that doghouse management, right? An employee disses them, shows disrespect to the manager. Manager, boom, tunes them out. Now they're in the doghouse. It's the same thing. We have to avoid that. That's not order. Doghouse management is disorder, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. So authority doesn't doesn't gain anything. Authority makes us powerless. It's the person that can influence with respect and wisdom that'll gain gain your followers. When you're wise and you treat people well and with respect and you care about them, people will follow you. It just happens. In fact, it can't not happen if you are that way. It just can't not happen. It's just true. Decrease drama, diffuse the situation rather than amplify it. If you have a situation and you buy into the chaos.
Did we skip one?
I think we-
Did I? Oh, trust and credibility. Okay, be trustworthy and trust others. That kind of stands to reason, right? If you can't be trusted, you're going to lose people, right?
I think trust is one of the most important parts of being a leader.
Yep.
You and I
Trust
have
is
talked about
order.
this several times.
Trust is order.
I've only been at Rachel's store for a month, and our team loves me. Well, I wouldn't say love, but they like what I do, and that makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But you have a very hefty job in front of you. You have to keep their trust by being trustworthy.
Yep.
So it's more about you than it is them. So it's more about you working to be trustworthy all the time
They
and
just
measuring up
like
to that.
having someone other than Rachel have their
Mhm.
stuff in order and not go completely and leave them high and dry.
Right. Yep. That's important. So decrease drama, diffuse the situation rather than amplify it. When there's a little flame, you can pour water on it or you can pour gasoline on it. Right? How many times have you seen a leader pour gasoline on a problem?
Just make it
Oh,
worse,
man.
yeah.
Just make it worse. Here's the thing: too many leaders, especially if you're trying to use authority, it's important for a leader to win. But that's just pouring gasoline. One person kind of shows a little bit of disrespect or a little disdain towards the system or the man, or maybe you're the man, and then the leader wants to get on top of that. So they want to get on top. So they're gonna show a little bit more, like they're gonna put their authority up there and say, no, that's not. All you're doing is you're throwing gasoline on the fire. Yeah. Sometimes you got to just listen and say, okay, that's interesting. Let's try this instead.
And I think that goes along with almost like the gossiping, like a leader is gonna put the gossip to rest.
Gonna throw
Yeah.
water on that fire.
Yes.
Yep.
And then someone who wants to be more of a boss is gonna
Right.
just
Yep.
feed into it and keep going with it, and then
Or counter it somehow. Well, oh yeah, well you think
Yeah.
that about me? Well, this is what's really happening. And they just feed into it. And it's dumb. It's immature. It's
I
chaos.
always say, if you
Especially-
have a problem, you can come talk to us privately.
Yep.
There's no reason just to talk to it about other people. It's not
Yep.
their business.
Although it happens.
And I'd say especially in this culture with us having so many young kids.
Yep.
It's their instinct to.
Right.
So just kind of drama.
Yeah. Well, that's the next part too. Is avoid overreactions and underreactions. Right. That's an important way to bring order to it. You can bring order by reacting appropriately, not overreacting. Overreacting can be like what we just talked about. You're throwing gasoline on it. You can, maybe it's a small problem, but the leader reacts as if it's a big problem. Hey, don't do that. Oh, what are you talking about? Yeah, we always weigh and measure. Don't you weigh and measure every single time. You get it? I mean, I've seen that. I've seen managers go overboard and they're overreact, and it doesn't
She
mean.
doesn't do it like that, but it's in there.
But it is important to not underreact either. You shouldn't just look over and go, hey, you should probably be following the portion charts. That's not going to be it either. But somewhere in the middle, the appropriate will, hey, look, just so you know, if you don't follow the portion charts,
We're short on cheese.
we're going to be short on cheese. We're going to be our
They're gonna
pepperonis,
On
and the
Friday.
customers aren't going to know what to expect. They need to
Everything
get
else.
the customer needs to get the same product every single time, and that's not going to happen unless
Consistency
we.
of the product.
Yeah, there's gonna be
Yeah.
more goes into it, like
Yep.
the whole picture.
And that has to do with brand protection, right? Part of our job is to protect our brand and so that the customers, they know what to expect. Again, it comes back down to knowing what to expect. If the customer is anxious about going to Papa Murphy's because the last time they were there, it's all chaos, and they're anxious because they don't know what to expect because the last two times they've gotten two different pizzas that look different, that's chaos. That's anxiety. People don't want to be around anxiety. They run away. So they go to the place down the street, maybe Northern Lights, where the last time they went, there was order. They got exactly what they ordered. It was fast and it was friendly, and it just seemed so much more orderly than the last time I was. See what I'm saying? And that's what happens. So, all right. Don't criticize. It leads to division and increases anxiety. There's really no reason to ever criticize, but yet somehow we do it. I'm not talking about constructively bringing something to somebody's attention in an assertive way. That's different than criticizing. You all know the difference. We've talked about that enough. So, cultivate a culture of appreciation by showing thanks. That's order. Anytime that you see something that someone does well, or some quality of someone that is good, and you reinforce it, you're creating order. You're saying, I want you to go this way, and you are going this way, so great job. And that person's going to want to continue going that way, the same way that you are. Make sense? And that's where that appreciation comes from. It's positive reinforcement that makes people desire to go the same way that you're going. They desire to follow the systems. They desire to listen to you and learn about where they're headed. Because everybody wants to know where they're headed. No one wants to be lost. No one wants to be in fear of what's going to happen. So, and then the last one here, I think it's the last one. Yeah, it is the last one. Serve the team. Don't try to make them serve you. You can't. You just can't make your team serve you. You can't. You just have to serve the team. Hey, what do you need? What can I do for you? How can I help you? Here's what's expected. Here's what I really need to do. Can I count on that? And if I can count on that, how can I help you though? What do you see as the obstacles that I can help you get over? That's serving your team. It's not doing it for them, but it's serving them, helping them,
You can usually tell, you can see it on people's faces usually when they're confused, they're having a problem.
Right.
Like, hey, what's going on,
And the better you do
You
it,
see it right in their
the
face.
more you do it, the more you sense that and you get on board. So anyway, that's what a culture of order looks like. You guys, does that all make sense? Is that helpful? Do you guys feel like yeah. And part of this too, I know much of this you guys have already heard us talk about in some ways, but part of this is the reason why sometimes we come at things at a different angle, so that it can spark something in your mind and you can bring it back to your crew that same way. I want you guys to plagiarize me all the time. I want you guys to take the stuff that I talk about and bring it back and pretend it's your own. Pretend that you're the one that thought of that. Do it. Do it. Because here's the trick. Even that you didn't, even though maybe you didn't invent that idea, pretend like you did, because you'll look like the smart guy.
And
The
then in
thing-
turn will help you continue.
Bingo. Because there's nothing I've ever taught you guys that I invented. I just maybe figured out a different way to present it in some cases, and sometimes I just present it exactly the same way I learned it.
Do the same thing with other people.
But you don't have to, if you want to be a CEO in General Motors, you don't have to know how to reinvent the wheel.